Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday night sermon. You have joined Eye Opener Society. My name is Gary Dean. I again thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're tuning in live on Facebook or live on YouTube. We appreciate you being here and enjoy the sermon. And if you missed it live, you can always catch us on our recording on our regular Podbean channels or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. So I'm going to start off, and we do have our Cosmic Fairy Princess, Lizzie, here, and she missed out on last week's. And if you remember, last week was kind of on the Murphy's Law. So we're going to have, I know, a great sermon from Lizzie as well. So if we stand by, I'm going to get mine out of the way, and then we'll jump in and we'll have Lizzie join us. So again, thank you and good evening. Welcome. Again, my name is Gary Dean, and tonight I'd like to talk about something that affects every one of us every single day: our thoughts, our emotions, and what we choose to do with them. You ever notice how a single feeling can seem to take over your entire day? You wake up in a bad mood, and before long, everything starts to look negative. Every inconvenience feels bigger than it really is. Every conversation seems more frustrating. Before you know it, you've convinced yourself that this is going to be a bad day. But what if that feeling wasn't meant to become your entire day? What if it was simply a signal, a message, an invitation to stop for a moment and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? You see, we all experience anxiety. We all experience sadness. We all experience moments where we don't feel like ourselves. Those emotions are not failures. They're just part of being human. The mistake isn't having those feelings. The mistake is allowing them to become a permanent residence instead of a temporary visitor. When we recognize we're struggling, we have an opportunity. Instead of saying, this is just who I am today, we can ask ourselves, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Maybe you're overwhelmed because you've taken on too much. Maybe you're exhausted because you haven't given yourself permission to rest. Maybe you're discouraged because you've forgotten how far you've already come. Whatever the reason may be, awareness gives us the ability to create a plan. It's not going to be a perfect plan, not a plan that fixes everything overnight. It's just the next step. And sometimes the next step is making a phone call, or maybe taking a walk, or sometimes it's sitting quietly in meditation. Sometimes it's reaching out to someone you trust, and sometimes it's simply deciding that tomorrow will not look exactly like today. Growth rarely happens all at once. It happens one decision at a time, one thought at a time, just one small action at a time. So now let's look at the other side of the equation. What happens when life is going well? When you wake up energized, when you're smiling, or when you wake up energized, smiling, and everything seems to be flowing perfectly. Most of us simply enjoy it while it lasts. Then we wait for it to disappear. But why? Why do we assume that joy has an expiration date? Why do we accept happiness as something temporary instead of something we can intentionally cultivate? What if we asked a different question? Instead of asking, how long will this feeling last? What if we asked, how can I expand this feeling? So think about that for a moment. How do you expand joyful moments? Maybe you share it with someone else or express gratitude for it. Perhaps you write it down in a journal so you remember what created it. Maybe you spend a little more time doing the things that brought you that feeling in the first place. Positive emotions are a lot like a fire. If you ignore the fire, eventually it burns down to glowing embers. But if you continue adding the right fuel, the fire grows stronger. Our thoughts work in much the same way. Whatever we feed expands. If we constantly feed fear, well, fear grows. If we constantly feed resentment, that resentment grows. If we feed hope, hope grows. If we constantly feed gratitude, gratitude will grow. Our minds naturally expand whatever we repeatedly give our attention to. That's why becoming aware of our thoughts is one of the greatest spiritual practices that we can develop. It's not because every thought is true, but because every thought has the potential to grow. And here's another way to think about it. Imagine you're standing in a completely dark room, and way off in the distance is this tiny candle. It's just one small flame. It isn't enough to light the whole room, but it proves something incredibly important. The darkness isn't complete. See, there is light, even if it's only a spark. Now imagine walking towards that candle, and with every step, that light is going to become brighter. It doesn't change because the candle grew. It changes because you move closer to it. And sometimes that's exactly what life asks of us. Not to create the light, but to move towards it. To notice the smallest blessing and the smallest victories. The smallest reason to smile. Because once we recognize that light, we can begin expanding it. We can focus on it, nurture it, protect it, share it, and little by little, that tiny flame begins illuminating more and more of our lives. One of the greatest lessons I've been learning is life doesn't usually change all at once. Nope, it expands. Our fears, they expand. Our confidence, it expands. Peace expands. Our purpose expands. And the question is, which one are you feeding? Every single day, we're planting seeds. Some are seeds of doubt, and some are seeds of possibility. So months from now, we'll be living in the garden we've planted today. So choose your seeds carefully. Water the ones that bring you peace. Water the ones that inspire kindness. Water the ones that remind you of strength. And don't be discouraged if today's light feels small. Every sunrise begins with just the first hint of light on the horizon. Noon doesn't arrive all at once. It just grows. So does healing. So does wisdom, joy. So tonight, I like to leave you with one simple challenge. Tomorrow morning, pay attention to the very first good thing that happens. Maybe it's your first sip of coffee. Maybe it's hearing that bird outside. Or maybe it's someone just smiling at you. And maybe it's simply waking up with another opportunity to begin all over again. So don't let that moment pass unnoticed. Just pause, appreciate it, and then ask yourself one question. How can I expand this? Because the life we're seeking isn't built from one extraordinary moment. It's built from thousands of ordinary moments that we chose to expand. So may you continue finding your light. May you continue growing your peace. And may you never underestimate how one small spark, when nurtured with intention, can become a light that not only transfers your own life, but also shines brightly enough to guide someone else. So thank you for being here tonight. And I wait for next week to bring you more of the sermons. And up next, we have our wonderful cosmic fairy princess, Lizzie. So Lizzie, just hang on one second while I get you out of here.
Okay. First, thank you very much for that pep talk. That puts me very much in a good vibe for my talk today. And as always, there seems to be a lot of synchronicities. Awareness is something that I've really been playing with this week. I mean, when can you really not play with awareness? It seems to kind of be the foundation of all of it. What I was really thinking about this week is how when you're told something, how something works, how your body heals, how your brain learns what you deserve, what a person is capable of, what you're supposed to be doing. When you're told these things, you generally accept them as a small person. And this isn't a new concept, but I want to take it just a little bit further because I want you to really think about how the bigger systems tend to work. The public education system, which does a lovely job. I don't want to argue with it. But one thing that they have as a goal is to have a standard education across the board so that whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast in the third grade, you're learning these things with just slight variations to it. And their purpose behind it is very beautiful. So that when these two people go and meet later in life, they have a general basis of understanding of how the world works together. They can communicate, they can collaborate easier. But on the flip side of that is when you're told how the world operates, that's how you believe the world operates. It literally creates your perception of the world, the beliefs that support everything you're doing and why you're doing it. And so when we set up everybody across the whole country or the whole world, whatever, to all learn exactly the same thing, you actually limit people's ability to explore things outside of the standard accepted perception. And again, not talking crap about public school, but this is something that is so built inherently in our systems, is in the public school, it's in our churches, it's in how we parent, it's in all of our social structures. And the first bit of that is to start becoming aware of it. How you describe the different things in your life, what you expect comes of it, what you believe leads into it, what morals push or pull on it. It's more than just our emotions, but our emotions are just one pathway to understanding how future us chooses to restructure us. Awareness is the first key, but articulation is the doorway. How you choose to describe it and how consciously you choose to coordinate everything changes the ground that you walk in on the other side. As you expand your awareness of the layers of something, it adds to the layers you are consciously aware of. Layers of consciousness. A part of you protects what you feel is vulnerable, while another harmonizes what doesn't yet fit into what we know. A part of you records what you witness and experience, and another writes the story about it, filled with metaphor, emotional connection, and opinions. Awareness is the key that opens the aspects to the things you think you already know all about because you were told about it. The moment you become aware of something, you have a choice on how you choose to define it here moving forward. But the key with that one is that when you redefine it, you're redefining it from a place where you already know things. You're running a new idea through a bunch of facts that are built off of the very same systems of somebody telling you how something works. When you give it space to exist in the not knowing, give it space to exist in the void, you give your body, mind, and soul a minute to allow everything to shift around and kind of come into an agreement. You give your body space to express its wisdom to you because the body will always inherently know what's good for it, what's not, and where it wants to move. You can explore all of this from the perspective of different wounds. I'm apparently on a theme about public school right now. It's probably because we're getting ready to go back to school, you know? In elementary school, you're taught one history. In junior high, you're taught a slightly deeper history. In high school, you're taught the real history. But then when you move out into the world, you learn that it happened a lot differently than that. Sorry, my brain started going in too many different directions. As you try to come to a conclusion on all of this, it can expand out into a whole many different ways to look at it. You can look at all the different ways you were taught the different versions as the public school system failing to teach you history properly. But it also, you could look at it from the perspective that you just learned how to take everything you know and throw it out the window for the new facts that you've been given. You can completely choose how you view things, and at any moment when you see something and you're like, oh, I don't love that experience, there was something there for you. I went into my high school history class very upset about all of this because I got into history. And so I was learning what you learn outside of school and then hearing about the school's version, and that upset me. And then I was given this most beautiful history class where all of our assignments revolved around him giving us an event, and we had to write two papers, one from one perspective arguing why they were right, and one from another perspective arguing why they were right. And you weren't necessarily supposed to say which one you actually thought. He should be able to read your paper and assume you thought that way, because what he was trying to do was teach us how the way that you ask a question changes the way that you get the answer, both when you Google something, when you ask a person, or when you go researching something. The very way you choose to phrase the question absolutely changes everything. And more often than not, nobody's really right. And all of these things I learned from these silly little history classes that took me well into my 30s to really appreciate the experience that was. I explore all of this originally through, your emotional wounds, the things that you've been in, the things that you were told, that, all of that stuff. But the thing is exploring it that way means that your awareness, your focus, what you expect is all framed around emotional wounds and emotional baggage. And when you look for a red car, you'll see a red car. So at some point, if you so desire, there's a way to change the game. And to that is also the key would be to be aware of what you've got going. If you play it like a game, you can ask yourself questions, play with your own imagination, whatever silly thing comes up, and actually create kind of like game board pieces within the different aspects of how you operate in life. Like I said before, a part of you, expects something, a part of you writes it down. All of these different parts come together to be the you. But if you can understand how one part of it believes one thing and another part is expecting something different, it's better to understand what all you're moving towards without having to try to remember exactly what happened that you wish happened another way. And so one of the ways that I like to do this is to each of my chakras, dimensions, or whatever, is I like to place a persona. Like your author, your artist, your alchemist, your architect, whatever it is that you want. When you give them a job, you give them an outfit, you give them a little bit of a personality. What happens is the way that you relate to that layer of your consciousness changes. At first, you're like, oh, how cute, a fairy princess. But after a while, you start exploring why that particular layer comes out as a fairy princess, why it dresses exactly like that, and why it chooses to play in the energies that it does exactly like that. And when you look at all of this through the lens of a silly little game, it becomes quite fun. So, that's what I would recommend is playing your awareness, but add a little whimsy to it because it really does change how everything comes in after that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so very, very much, Lizzie. We really appreciate it. More than anything, we appreciate everyone who tunes in, joins us on these lives. Don't forget, this is every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless otherwise noted. We thank you again, and we'll see you again next week.